Hello, live streaming participants, because this next housekeeping matter is for you too. We will be taking a collaborative notes document. That collaborative notes document is going to be collated by my dear boss and colleague Jordan Carter right there. But dive in there too, because these are your notes as well. And I'm sure by now you've all found the catering in the bathrooms. Let's get stuck in.
Let's get stuck in. So introductions.
Please.
Shane Hobson, have previously worked for an LFC, some wireless ISPs, some fibre ISPs, and am now unencumbered by the chains of employment, and I'm free to express whatever opinions I choose to express today. And I'll get to my opinion after your introduction.
And I'm Andrew, and I'm Deputy Chief Executive at Internet NZ. Now we've got a little bit of a design for today, because Shane would like to, I think, what's the right word for it? Challenge? Challenge. What's your challenge?
So my point of view today to challenge some inspirational thinking is the government wasted $1.5 billion on UFB to enable more cat videos. Cat videos I've chucked into the box, Lightbox, Netflix, high definition YouTube, all sorts of streaming media entertainment I'm calling cat videos. So I'm suggesting that in my home, I have a low-speed internet connection and it serves my needs adequately, and that sort of money would have been far better off spent on hip operations, or if you twist my arm far up my back, possibly better broadband in the rural areas.
So I, today, am going to be the yin to Shane's yang, if that makes sense. And so I feel like I should write a statement up on the board here too. And what we're going to encourage today is an almost highly interactive debate between you people as we explore between these 2 points of view. So what's my point of view? We've barely scratched, I can't write, we've barely scratched the surface of the potential that investment has made. And so how do we drive it? Maybe he's right, indeed, that it's all about cat videos in that broader sense. But maybe he's wrong too. Maybe there's innovation that's already happening. And maybe we need to be thinking about how we can really put our foot down on the accelerator of that innovation and potential in order to drive even more value and opportunity out of that $1.5 billion. So I'm going to be the good cop, eh?
You're a good cop? I'm a bad cop. I was going to bring a black hat today. Anybody who subscribes to the Edward de Bono School of Thought, I'd have a black hat on. I'm not sure which colour yours would be.
Rainbow
hat. So, microphone in hand, we're interested in your opinion. Who thinks I'm right? Oh. And we've got a little bit more a little bit more interaction.
So we can do this a number of different ways. The floor is open to your comments, or we can do a round first where I'm going to distribute some post-it notes. And as I distribute these post-it notes, I'll gather them back up here and we'll start putting them up here. So if you've got a thought that you'd like to ensure we discuss and capture as part of this, here's your medium for having it discussed and captured. Do you want to take care of that pad? You want to take care of that pad? And I'll pick up the pen I just...
And remember, you can also post questions through the live stream chat. You can do that either remotely, or if you don't want to put your hand up and you've got something confrontational to say, you could do that anonymously through the live chat here as well, or just fire it on a post-it note.
So while we gather up, yes, sir. Oh, microphone first, please.
Isn't that a loaded question?
Which one?
The 1 million wasted.
No, it was wasted.
Oh, the whole 1 million, 1 billion.
1 billion?
1.5.
1.5 billion.
335.
Yep, they should have kept on shortening the copper loop,
Okay.
and spent the change on hip operations for old people.
Oh, Shane's already started to fight dirty. See, I'll do my big good cop routine in response to that. Because if we drive this potential right, that $1.5 billion is the opportunity to drive far more value in hip operations than it could have otherwise done, right? Let's think about a report that we commissioned not so long ago from the Innovation Partnership that talked about $34 billion of productivity benefit. If we just encourage businesses to use to the same degree as Australia, that's a lot of hip operations too. Which was the chicken and which is the egg? Ivan at the back there had a question.
Kia ora, Ivan Lomax. More of a comment, really. I just don't think it's as clear cut as that. I think UFB has been fantastic for companies or for high consumers. I think it's been a waste of money for probably 80% of sort of domestic households where they don't need 100 megs. So I think it's a bit of a both, really, and I'd be more inclined to spend a lot of that on rural broadband.
All right, so I'm going to start writing some things up on the board. Hands up if there is any post-it notes, because this isn't the only post-it note opportunity. Not yet. So let's get rural up on here for a start. The balance between that rural and urban investment. Peter, here.
This gentleman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Kia ora. I would say it's been a great investment. Speaking from two experiences I've had, so one with a hat on as a counsellor. In submissions, we had a chap come in and submit, but the part of the story he was telling, and I forget what the issue he was submitting on was that he's a young chap who's returned home from the United States to help his 80-year-old dad run the family farm. Now his real job is a software designer for a company in Boston. So he's working remotely at Hamarana, doing that job, but enabling his elderly father to stay on the farm that he loves with a passion and keep that farm in operation. My other hat I wear as chairman of the board that delivers Crankworks Mountain Bike Festival is that's a festival that's returned an economic benefit of 11.8 million to this community over the last 2 years. Now, it is first and foremost a global media production that brings in a worldwide audience. It's also brought over 7 million of media PR value to Rotorua as a mountain biking destination. We could not have delivered that global media or streamed it live on the internet as it is, were it not for the fact that ultra-fast broadband was down Ferry Springs Road and we were able to thrust under and get it onto the event arena in 2015 for the first running of that festival. So I think it's a great investment in terms of economic development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm going to mark that one as a point to me, Shane, because what did we just hear? 11 plus $7 million, thanks to better connectivity investment. People coming home and being able to do their global connected jobs from wherever they are in New Zealand, and indeed here in Rotorua. What a fantastic thing to have allowed for, thanks to great connectivity being spread out. Any response, bad cop? Or shall we go to the next comment from the floor?
Let's get a next comment from the floor.
Oh.
Thank you. Kia ora, my name's Jo Doherty. I work as part of council at the museum and also live rurally. So as I'm going to put my rural hat on, as somebody who lives rurally, and I have lived very rurally, remotely up in the Uruwaras, but now in Ririfakaitu, the challenge for me is actually staying in touch with the digital age, because rurally, where our connection is incredibly slow or very expensive, we see all this, get it on demand, download it, access it via the internet. If prior to about 12 months ago we were on an ADSL connection, only one person in our household could access the internet at any one time because it was so slow. And now, while we have a bit faster access via mobile, we still have a cap. So as soon as you go over that cap, it becomes incredibly expensive. So for us, I don't know which side of that, it's just a very frustrating position to be in as a rural householder, when we know how good it can be and the fibre goes past our gate to the rural school and we can't access it.
So has the rollout of UFB actually widened the digital divide? Because if you step back 5 or 10 years, if you step back a few years, most of us had something like ADSL, and people in a rural area had something a little bit worse than ADSL. And
Or
so the
satellite
divide was
download, we had to satellite download if you wanted
satellite.
it at all.
So the digital divide was about that much, rural here and urban here. And now 5 years later, urban's up here on fibre, and we've actually created a much wider gap between the urban class and the rural class. So should
Yes,
that
I
money,
agree with that.
which was spent on the urban fibre, have been better spent on shortening the copper network out in the rural areas and enabling more ADSL, better, more VDSL in the rural areas, where it really matters, where there's farming communities and people who would benefit from remote health situations.
I reckon you can take the point there, Shane, that rural challenge is a big one for you. You, Bruce, you've had your hand up.
Thank you. Bruce Scott from Senior Net here in Rotorua. When people talk about the internet, well, to me anyway, the next thing you're talking about or thinking about is communication. And this this discussion or debate's all about. I mean, the greatest need that people have is to communicate one with the other, whether it's within mum and the kids or grandma and granddad with their grandkids, exchanging photographs and that sort of thing. So the quicker and the more efficient we can communicate with one another, the better. So I see this ultra-fast broadband. I don't want to get into the rural-urban argument, but I mean, it's the faster we can make this network of communication work to everyone's benefit, the better. So thank you.
Maybe I'm at risk of putting words in your mouth, Bruce, but even though we've only got 75% of the country with far better internet, we had to start somewhere, perhaps. And we've been able to get 75% to scream ahead with the very best of technology that enables that communication.
And
I
faster
agree.
cat videos.
Faster cat videos. Well, back to the cat videos challenge.
Ernie?
What about you, Amber?
Ernie's next.
Sorry.
And then Hannah.
Thanks. I'm Ernie Newman. I'm a consultant from Whakatane. I'm going to give you half a point each because I think the answer is in the middle. I'd say probably half the money so far has been wasted, but that's actually pretty good because usually with government expenditure it's more than half that gets wasted. On a serious note, I think with the benefit of a decade of hindsight, what should have happened is that all the money should have gone to rural. The industry should have started in Queen Street and worked outwards, and the government should have started with the most remote farmhouse and worked inwards until the two met somewhere in the middle. And I think that would have found the right balance between public investment and commercial forces. As to where we go now, I think the next round is going to be really, really important because unless it's quite different to the last round, then it will be a failure. There is the potential for a lot of wastage if we simply look in the rearview mirror and do the same thing again, because there are lots more innovative and much more economical solutions that have come on stream, and we need to open the way for them to come about.
Sorry.
The next round of negotiations on UFB and RBI.
So what do you reckon, Amber?
Oh, I have a different perspective, which is that you put a monetary value on this, but cat videos get a lot of people through the day.
Videos are valuable!
Cat videos are very inspiring and empowering as well, and all this other gumph that you're lumping in with that. A good meme gets you through the day. Additional to that as well, I want to share an anecdote, which I've been a content producer, and on ADSL we had really bad connection. So what we'd have to do is upload it the night before to try and share all of our videos, gigabytes of it, and if it failed during the night, we then had to try the next night because we were trying to use the internet during the day. So with UFB, we were able to pretty much put it up and leave it for 20 minutes, and all of our backups could go, and we could upload it to YouTube really easily. So I feel like, although we can complain about people like using it and wasting it, as a content producer, it's been quite interesting, and I would hope that it will enable other people to produce content as well and not just be consumers. But there's also nothing wrong with being a consumer. Netflix does have some great documentaries. Sometimes you just don't want to think about stuff and can watch NCIS. Yes, I do watch NCIS, and it's terrible, but I love it. Yeah, that's all I sort of had to say.
So thank you very much, Amber. And I'm actually, I'm going to take that as a point.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. Yeah.
Why am I going to take that as a point? Because I really want to build off and endorse some of those comments, right? Because you are right? One person's cat video is another person's treasure. And I think that we look at the likes of Netflix, and while they are perhaps in that cat video territory, the millions of dollars of economic benefit that is flowing into their pockets suggests that somebody values what that work's being done. And perhaps due to this UFB thing, we have the opportunity for a New Zealand company to be the next Netflix and have everybody watching our cat videos rather than somebody else's. Then the other thing that Amber was bringing up there was maybe it's the video stuff that gets people in the door, but once they're in the door, what could they start doing with it next? When they've run out of NCIS episodes, what if they start doing something fantastic with it too? Do you want to enable that bad cop?
I think we'll go to our next
Oh, there you go.
This lady from 21.
Kia ora tātou. Ko heria te rangi I tōku ingoa. So usually I'd be on Andrew's side because I'm a technologist through and through. But just for today, I'm on Shane's side. That's because I think that 1.5 bill it meets the needs of current technology. So current users and current companies, current conferences. But what about our biggest problem in tech today is our lack of content creators. How could we have reused some of that money to get our rangatahi to create? Because what happens in the future when we've got these big, badass tools, but no one to build anything? That's what I want to say.
Thank you.
There we haven't even got carless drivers.
Over to you.
Kia ora, I'm Craig Young. I'm the CEO at Cushen. I've got a couple of points. I understand your comment, Shane, about 1.5 being wasted on cat videos, but the whole point of that, we did see a big spike in uptake when Netflix launched in New Zealand. So definitely entertainment is driving the uptake on the consumer side, right? So uptake's about 25%, and we were just talking about earlier about how we were really worried when the contracts were signed that we wouldn't hit 20% by 2020. What I think it does is it removes a barrier. So people, before you have it, people can say, I can't innovate because I don't have fast connectivity. Now I can't use that as an excuse. I can now start to innovate. Well, that's at least what I would like to start saying happen. The other thing I want to point out is, and I like Ernie's point about, remote rural. We've been talking about local solutions for local problems, and that sounds a little bit trite, but what it means is we can't have a national cookie cutter fits all solution. And this next round of $100 million in RBI2, I'm with Ernie. It's incredibly important what they do with that. They can't do the same as what they've done before, and 100 million won't cut it. So we need to be now setting the scene for when that 1.5 billion starts coming back from the LFCs back into the government coppers. It needs to be spent where it's really needed, which is in rural.
You, sir.
Kia ora whānau mā. My name's Hurricane Hunia. I'm also from Whakatane. I'm also going to give you guys half a point each. And maybe we're all fence sitters over there. But I think somebody from the government must have been watching Kevin Costner's movie, The Field of Dreams. I don't know if you guys know that movie where the main saying was, if you build it, they will come. And I think that was probably the aim there. Whakatane has had a strategy for a little while of local to marketing the place as a destination for businesses to move to, and the council had spent a whole lot of money on fibre before the UFB rollout happened, and also the Wānanga had spent a lot of money on fibre, 20 million in fact. I was Wellington based, and I had the opportunity to move back home to my place of living, or where my people were. So I took up that opportunity, and I was able to do so because of the internet. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there for places like this to be able to bring businesses back. I still look after a number of government organisations and their systems from Whakatane, and I'm hoping to bring a lot more people on from the area to do so. So yeah, half a point each, thanks.
Hey, so I'm Aoife. I'm with the Rotorua Lakes Council. I'm from Ireland originally, so moving to New Zealand was quite a transformation for me because Patawa kind of alluded to it earlier, but it really was like coming back in time. It was crazy. It was, internet was so slow, things you just couldn't have, and even as a councillor, we're looking at, cloud-hosted services, which, if we could take advantage, would be great, but at the moment, it's just not feasible. You just can't do that. So 1.5 billion is great, but that's just the tip of the ocean, really. It's, what are we trying to achieve as a country? Do we actually want to keep up with the rest of the world, or are we happy to live as a group of farmers and forestry workers and stay in our primary industries? You got to put the investment in, and this is the start. Getting rural on is great, but doing something with this investment will be the biggest thing. So what else is the government going to do to attract those companies to the local areas? Are they going to put subsidies? What are they going to do? So it's sort of like, think ahead, but don't diss what we've already done, because it's, guys, it's a big step.
I'm actually, I'd a point half each, because I heard there that there's a big challenge if we really don't want to waste that 1.5 billion. That we've actually got to spend a bit more cash to really drive some exciting value out of it. That maybe it isn't a case of build it and they will come, right? You've actually got to put some more money where your mouth is and encourage and develop and foster some of those opportunities too.
Good morning, Peter Lane. As Ernie is, I'm an independent consultant, and as I'll follow his precedent of giving you half a point each as well. I think that the issue is not that $1.5 billion has been wasted on cat videos. I think that the issue is that there is a potential, if we don't watch out, that we will have wasted $1.5 billion on cat videos. The infrastructure, the $1.5 billion represents the first step of an infrastructure investment. What we do with that in the coming years is what really is going to drive the value equation. Yes, we've got to spend the money first. Yes, it would be hopeful that we could actually start getting some return on that investment sooner rather than later. But when New Zealand as a society decided to start putting in a power grid, I'm sure that the same argument applied, but I'm pretty sure that most people in this room would see that the power grid is a pretty useful thing and couldn't envisage life without it. And my other comment is that, well, at least the hip replacement with a UFB can be done by the best telesurgeon in the world.
So what do you think, Bad Cop? That power thing was all just for, what, popcorn makers and donut machines, eh?
Yep, absolutely.
Kia ora, my name is Raina. I'm not going to give you any points yet.
Oh, we've got to work for it, do we?
Yeah. But I just want to say, as a basic user of the digital world, thanks to the UFB development, our whānau had a wānanga 2 weeks ago where we were able to Skype in cousins in Perth. And, you know, we couldn't do that 5 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So technology has meant that we can connect people, and now we learn our waiata and moteatea and whakapapa globally. So we can share the knowledge from us here at the Haukainga with our whānau overseas. We couldn't do that before. So I think UFB gets a point.
UFB gets a point. Because it's not just all about the economic stuff, is it? Because this is an opportunity to share culture and learning as well. They aren't cat videos, are they?
No, but I would argue that many of the things we've talked about here so far could be accomplished across the sort of connection that I have at home. I live in the country. My service is comparable to VDSL in town, and I don't want for anything more. We've talked about streaming video, we've talked about Skype, a little bit of telehealth. All of that sort of stuff can be accomplished over the sort of service that I have in my home today, living in rural Waikato on nothing better than VDSL. So there's been some other talk about the future potential of a fibre network, but we're living in the future now. We are 5 years down the UFB journey. So 5 years is supposedly the cut-off point where a startup business, if a startup business has got past 5 years, it's made it, it's survived, it's going to prosper. So we're now 5 years down the UFB journey. Where are the UFB success stories? I've heard, what are the stories which work on UFB but don't work on VDSL? What is it truly enabled?
There's a challenge.
There's a couple here. Ray?
Fella there. And then
Now I've got the context of discussion. Okay, I'm going to give that joker there a big point, right?
A big point.
Awesome, because it has changed the ways that we do things, but not fully. But what I will do is I'll take it away from you and I'll give it to you, because as a connection person, as a person that operates in a system where our people think it's an obligation to deliver this stuff, the government has forgotten that there is economics to it. Because if you ain't got a sustainable network and it belongs to someone else, you ain't got no sustainability. So where is that $1.5 million worth of infrastructure gone? That's the question that I've always asked, but I always knew. It doesn't belong to you and I. We will pay for it, but we put the $1.5 billion on. So that's why it is about economics. It's all about economics, because the people in this room, no matter what you do, you're going to have to pay for it, right? And that's why I give you the point, is because the government hasn't got a sustainable outcome for their people, okay? So that's what I think.
Thank you.
How about you, mate?
UFB, Mike.
So, oh my God. So, a couple points. I'd just like to go down the path of my tour in here. Content producer, whatever. So for my personal mahi and stuff, it's been awesome. The being able to upload, stream, and stuff like that has just been so much faster. So that's that. But in terms of a success story for UFB, I come from a really rural place in the far north, in the Hokianga, called Mitimiti, North Hokianga. And this place is at the end of the road, gravel still for an hour. Up until end of last year, there was no coverage, no internet. It was still on dial-up sort of thing. It was pretty bad. The government didn't pay for it, but the marae got together, a community initiative got together, and they installed ultra-fast broadband for the whole community. Now, in terms of back in the days when there was the urban drift, everyone left Mitimiti to go to Auckland, to wherever, to get jobs and stuff like that. Now we're starting to see people wanting to go back to Mitimiti because that there's the ultra-fast broadband. Oh my God, there's opportunity there now. It's not just seen as this place to go back at Christmas. Now I can go back to Mitimiti. Using the ultra-fast broadband, I can do whatever I want to do, and I can actually make it sustainable and still live on my papakainga, which is pretty amazing, I reckon. And we're seeing now more and more young, small businesses wanting to move home because of the ultra-fast broadband that is at Mitimiti.
Thank you. And it was community funded?
Yeah. Well, grants and stuff like that, but yeah, all the...
Not directly part of the government fibre bill.
No. So it's all Mitimiti First Marae in Aotearoa to get this initiative through, and they've got heaps of few little grants and stuff like that. Vodafone, Orcon, all helped them out. But yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That's a great story. You should tell people more about how you accomplished that, so it can be replicated in other rural areas.
So Alan here.
So I guess I have to declare an interest because I work for Chorus and we got some of the benefit of having a loan of 1.5 billion, because the money, it goes back into the coffers as been mentioned. And I mean, one of the things that would be good to see would be that when it goes back, it comes back out to do some more of New Zealand. But one of the things I've heard already this morning, and I heard at NetHui in South Auckland on Saturday, is all these people with examples of how it's an enabler to enable them to turn what was a small business or a small business idea to something they could run from home. And you know, we recently launched a gigabit service, and you'd think, well, who needs a gigabit service it only gives you bragging rights that you got the fastest internet on the block. What are you going to do with it? But one of the, like we ran a stand at the home show recently, and this guy turned up and he said, "Oh, I'm trying to run a business from home and it won't work." And and we said, "Well, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I run cookery classes from home. So I've got a complete commercial kitchen set up at home, and I've got webcams and all things, and I interact with about 20 people at a time on their webcams, teaching them cooking." And we went, "Oh yeah, well, you're going to need at least a gigabit to do that, because he needed high quality video streaming so that people could see what things looked like when he was cooking them, what ingredients looked like." So there's someone who can run a business from their home with a high-speed internet connection and enable a whole bunch of other people to either become commercial chefs or just follow a hobby. So you hear lots of business stories, you hear lots of personal stories. It really is an enabler for everybody.
That was a really good example. I'll give you that one, Andrew.
Oh, thanks, mate. We're getting generous here. This is going to turn an anti-Trump Clinton, so.
Just talking about a business that's not succeeding to its potential. So one of the oldest tourism businesses in Rotorua is the Buried Village. So back before the eruption, that was the hotel where people stayed before they went to visit the pink and white terraces. It's been, I guess, excavated and developed as a business, but it's on dial-up broadband, and they're tearing their hair out. So Tarawera is one of our priority areas for the RBI2 funding, for the application we've got in, and we are just hanging out for the government to make that decision, and it's not the only one in our district, but that business could achieve so much more if only we could get them on ultra-fast broadband. It's so frustrating, and I hear the government's sitting on 1.8 billion of surplus. For goodness sake, guys, make a decision and add to that 1.5. And just on cat videos, I just think back to my late mother, when she was in a rest home where they weren't allowed pets, and I tautoko your comment about cat videos getting people through the day. So how many old people are in retirement videos, retirement homes and villages where they're able to not have an actual pet, but they can have virtual pandas and virtual cats all day, and just how great that is for them.
Thank you. How about you, Him?
Yeah. Hello. Yes. I just wanted to talk about even there's still parts of the region that haven't got ultra fast broadband, and I'm talking like say out the East Coast way towards Whakatohia and Te Kaha up to Te Araroa and stuff like that. So that's where I'd say they've just scratched the surface. So that's something that the powers that be need to look at, because we've got it here in Rotorua, but like even as far as Tarawera, we're getting sort of dial-up broadband, so that's where it's failed. That's where it's failed New Zealand in terms of the communities and connecting those networks. It's okay to have the main centres connected because they're well connected with ultra fast broadband, but where it has scratched the surface of those in the further outreaches of the regions, Miti was touched by I think Ngāpu Waia, who managed to set it up over there. But I just think there needs to be a little bit more done out in the external regions of New Zealand and stuff like that. And back to the cat videos. Thanks for the cat videos, Shay and me.
There's a question to his left. Yeah.
Oh, Jordan's also keen. But you go first, Patel, and then we'll get Jordan in.
It's a bit both ways with the enablement, but I want to acknowledge Ray Searsia, and he's been a part of the UFB and the RBI for some time and invited us to a hui maybe 3-4 years ago when the RBI was coming up. And what amazed me was to see Vodafone and Spark Telecom working together. And for me, it set off some real big warning sounds, sirens. when the two big incumbents in the room start to work together and the government's colluding with them, 1.5 billion plus the 300 million RBI makes me a bit nervous that perhaps this is an old boys network deal. And I mean, in the beginning I thought maybe I'm just being paranoid. But then the two things that caught my surprise were Vodafone started putting up all the businesses that they'd been working with, for the RBI in particular. And what was fascinating was 5 of the people that own those businesses were in the room and had never been contacted by Vodafone or by Telecom, was Telecom then Spike now. So it was almost like the big guys had grabbed your company, and this is going to be awesome for you. So they were claiming credit for something that they hadn't done. So they were kind of, this is our army, but none of those soldiers knew they were part of Vodafone's army. And then when they gave the presentation about RBI, it was, we're going to schools and we're going to community centres. And for us, we're going to help Māori. But for all the Māori in the room, we were like, why aren't you going to marae? Because that's the natural commonplace for all of us. And we watched them Photoshop the marae into their presentation as we spoke. And then they told us that they couldn't get the RBI plan because the Māori party said no. So Stephen Joyce had told, back then it was Peter Sharples and Tari Anaturia, block them. Māori party said block them because they're not doing anything for Māori. So what's his name, Steve? I think Steve Reeder from Vodafone and Paul Leslie from Telecom, they somehow managed, they appealed to our aroha as Māori. They said, come and help us. Have a kōrero, maybe those things that you point out, we can adopt and put into a plan, which was code for Maoris help us win those Maoris, and once we win, we're gone. So we helped, we're naive, but we helped Vodafone and Telecom when the RBI passed the Māori Party stage into Stephen Joyce and Bill English's. And as soon as they got the 300 million, they disappeared.
Shane,
So for me, it's that collusion between big companies and the government, because we know Stephen Joyce is mates with certain people. But what's more disappointing is that it was bad planning. And then to chuck $1.8 billion of bad planning and maybe put another $1 billion of bad planning is probably not best for all of us.
Shane, you were generous before, my friend, in giving me a point. I'd like to reciprocate. If it was a rip-off, not only a waste, but a rip-off as well, then surely you've got to take that one. Technological extortion, no less. Jordan, what do you think?
Sorry, I think you make some really good points here about, especially around connectivity to rural marae, where broadband affordability is a real issue in rural areas. I live in a road where there are perhaps 50 residents, there's 2 marae, and I'm picking most of my neighbours have no internet into their home and can't afford internet into their home at a typical retail price of $70 a month. But if the government had funded fibre into the 2 marae in the local area, it'd be very easy to put up a bit of Wi-Fi or put a computer suite into each of those marae and effectively deliver free or very low cost affordable internet to every resident on my road. But that opportunity's been missed. Hopefully they pick up that opportunity next time. Yeah, yep. There's a few examples. Why not every one of them? Fewer cat videos, more marae.
What do you reckon, Jordan?
I just don't know how to use it. It's not my tech. I guess the point I would make is that the investment was made and it's done. Governments always have this temptation to do plans that affect as many people as possible easily. So I guess the rollout in the urban areas comes from that sort of political priority. So I don't find it surprising. And I'm glad that we've got it more than we don't. I'd rather have UFB than not have UFB. But I think the point that a couple of others have made is really important, which is big national solutions don't meet local needs all the time. And you could make a huge amount of difference in a whole bunch of regional and local areas building off the fibre that goes past the gate, or making sure that there's some free Wi-Fi in marae areas, or community centres, or tourism facilities, that a big national multi-$100 partnership with the big guys just isn't going to do. So there's that better that it happened than it didn't. Need some local options and some really organic stuff going on in the RBI2. I don't know if that's on the cards because I don't know where UFB and RBI2 are at. This all seems to be late. And I guess the last point I make is in the more remote areas, there are better and better Wi-Fi and wireless access options, and we've got to encourage the technology that's best to be used to deliver what is needed and not necessarily think about copper loops.
There we go. So I really like that theme there of that big national versus the local and real solution. And I think that that's one of the questions that I'd love to, don't get me wrong, I'd love to hear what you two say as well, but how can we really start driving that real local value-adding sort of uses of this internet stuff? What if the point is down in the middle of our two positions here, that we've got a great big opportunity to secure value, but we're probably going to need to do something different? What do you reckon, Amber?
I'm not necessarily going to answer that question, but I have some points that I sort of made. So in terms of UFB, gaming and headshotting US players is really great on UFB, which I couldn't do on ADSL if you want something that can be done on UFB but not ADSL, especially on Halo because they used to jump around me. So that's really good. And then to address Hidia's point earlier around content producing and trying to get more content producers going, my sort of view is as well, if we can give them access to content to see inherently how sexist and racist it is, it might empower some of our young people. I'd love to see more Wahine superheroes, you know, that type of thing. And hopefully empowers them to build those own content. Then on top of that, you have a different point of view where I've been doing some work with social housing and had a chat to a chef on a marae, because you have to get friendly with them to make sure you get good kai. And she had a chat to me about she couldn't even afford ADSL. It was a choice between doing a Warrant of Fitness on her car or having internet. And she said she needed to drive around and be able to drop off her whānau. So, I mean, that's a different side to this, and the fact that people can't afford housing and food, let alone broadband. So
should that money have been spent on addressing the cost of broadband? So instead of rolling out fibre to people who can afford to buy fibre, what about rolling out an alternative service, better cellular connections or better copper connections, but applying some sort of pricing model to those services so that they're much more affordable, so a broader base of New Zealand can access the internet rather than just
is that a question to me that you want me to answer? Because I have a different question.
Ernie's.
Do politicians need to earn as much as they do?
Oh.
Where's the other money that, other than the 1.5 billion?
What about you, Ernie?
So I want to ask a challenging question about whether we're actually using what we've got. There was a guy over here, unfortunately just gone out of the room, who was talking about East Cape before, and cast my mind back, and a year or two ago I did a project around there putting putting video into a number of health centres, about 10 of them in total, 7 of which were Ngāti Porou ones on the eastern side of the Cape, from Te Araroa right down to Gisborne. And part of the objective of the project was to showcase RBI 1 for the government. Well, in fact, the quality of the local Wi-Fi solution, Gisborne.net, was so high that nobody had any interest in changing. It was a lot cheaper than RBI 1, I should say. And ironically, what the government actually ended up proving in that context was that in that area, RBI 1 was a bit of a white elephant because there was already a really good wireless solution available. So I asked the question, all those places that were mentioned, including Te Kaha and Waihao Bay on the western side, you can actually get video quality broadband there. Why is it not being used? Are we all sort of turning a blind eye to the commercial services that are already there and waiting for the government to come along with a service run through a big telco, which is probably going to be twice the price?
I feel like there was a point in there for you, Shane, because what if we did ultimately waste that money by overbuilding really good ideas that were already out there and in practice, right? Maybe we could have spent that cash on places where the good ideas hadn't yet happened yet, or where they were going to be really hard because they were too small, right?
Or give that cash
Yep.
to that ISP to enable him to extend outwards, because he's obviously got the expert knowledge in that area. He's already got the backbone infrastructure for that territory. He knows how the territory works. It'd be far more efficient to give him the money, and he just extends out and keeps filling in the gaps and starts connecting out the valleys with just 5 people in, where it's not viable to put up a cell site for some colossal amount of wasted money.
What do you think?
Okay,
videos.
just on that, 8 years ago, I started a WiMAX company, and I was the villain trying to do something different. The fight wasn't for providing a service to our people. The fight was to get rid of the competition. And then the government paid the opposition to get rid of the other opposition. So that's what Poto was talking about, collusion. Now they're back 8 years later, and they're going to do exactly what we were doing. Ivan and I practice in that area. You know, we've been doing it because it was about getting a connection to our people that was affordable. And the affordability that's coming is the government can see it. The government can see this affordability, but they just don't know how to politicise it, right? Because of the economics that they've bought into. There's contracts that you people don't even see that will not get destroyed. They will not be ripped up. You're going to pay for it whether you like it or not. The only way around it is the next step. At last NetHui, we had RBI, and in that discussion, there was about 5 or 6 operators in that room that were waiting for the government to say, we're going to support you, right? And that was at the last NetHui in Auckland. We went away with the idea of thinking that, shit, they're going to look at the common sense in it. And then they brought out this new thing called digital enablement, and then RBI 2. Well, it's failed, it's finished, it's not going to take off because there's not enough time to get us to that space in 5 years because of the political environment we're in. Right? So they haven't got an economic plan behind that political plan. These guys here, like Ivan, there's 7 of us out there that are fighting to get a connection to our communities. Don't worry, it's going to happen with your money or without it. We're not worried about that. Because the next technology will make it more affordable for us to actually provide a faster service. And the elephant in the room is Māori, right? Because one thing they own that those big companies don't own is spectrum. And in that spectrum, that's where the capability is. So we'll be able to watch all the cats, all the CSI we like, because we've got the capability, and that's what we're talking about. If we all bandy together and think about the last mile instead of the backhaul, then we'll get what we want. But if we're going to think about all these big timers are going to save us, get over it, they're not. Right. We've got to do it ourselves. Kia ora.
Thank you. So one of the things that local providers have the advantage of doing, like that particular wireless ISP and many other wireless ISPs who own their own infrastructure, is they have the ability to price discriminate, which most people think, price discrimination, that sounds like a terrible thing. But if you apply a Robin Hood sort of attitude to it, it means you might be charging a little bit more to people who can afford it, business for example, and it means you can afford to lower your prices to people who otherwise couldn't afford it. But as soon as you start applying government money into a situation, for example, a UFB build, it becomes very difficult to price discriminate because open access principles start being applied to that money, and you're then at a benchmark of $75 for a retail service, and there's no mechanism to drop that down. Even though out of that $75, $50 is disappearing off to the LFC or the network owner, so the true cost of broadband is arguably $25. So with the right networks in place, there's the ability to deliver broadband to people for just $25 a month. And we see there's an example of that out in the other room where the Spark Jump service provides prepaid broadband, which is affordable at an entry price of $15 using an alternative network. No government subsidies involved there, nice and simple. no open access principles to burden our thinking.
Right, just before you jump in there, Patawa, I'm going to do my good cop routine on that though too.
Yep.
Because those ideas like Spark Jump, yeah, they're coming from the big guys. Yeah, it's $15 for 30 gigs. It's also $52 for 100 gigs.
Yep.
And they can only do that stuff though, off the fact that we arguably spent that $1.5 billion getting fibre out there so that that traffic can be carried back. That $1.5 billion probably enabled a lot of other things that we may not realise though too, right?
Half a point each?
Or maybe half a point in each, I reckon. What do you reckon, Patawa?
With the subsidising part, I'm not a Winston fan, but could Kaumātua get subsidised internet on their gold cards? Is that, if you're looking for a mechanism to subsidise, why don't our elders get cheap or free internet, knowing they're not going to be heavy consumers? You know, they're not massive companies. It's just one-on-one usually. So why can't we use a mechanism that's already there to get at least one section of our community looked after?
Not a bad idea.
Gold cards, community services cards, that's where we should be giving
Community services cards too, another good idea. What else could we be doing?
We haven't got a lot of time left. We should. Is there anybody here we haven't heard from?
Yeah, good point.
That we'd really love to hear from. So we've had a few contributors who've been great contributors. Are there any people who haven't said anything who would love to get there?
We haven't heard from chat quite yet.
Okay.
But one piece of feedback is UFB is allowing me to watch this morning's session from Auckland.
Oh!
Should probably work.
Although the person from chat admits that it's Rowan McMahon from Crown Fighter Holdings, so he's a bit biased.
and I watched this session. I watched this session on Saturday morning in South Auckland from my rural home in Waikato on a wireless network.
Is that another half point each? Thanks,
well,
Ron.
UFB didn't enable streaming that service.
Oh.
No, it worked perfectly. It was fabulous. I honestly could not wish for anything more than what I've got at home at the moment.
Who else?
In Hamilton City.
Yeah, well, when the whole sort of UFB argument, well, not the argument, when it was all sort of rolling out, and RBI and that, you know, all we heard was speed, speed, speed. We need speed. Everyone's got to have a speed that's this. And I've heard the stories about the mountain bike and the whānau connection and up in rural areas, and that's great. And I believe UFB's enabled that. But I get back to my original point. 80% of the population can still do that without having UFB. All we need to do is spend a wee bit of money to get to the people who've got nothing.
So who else? Who else wants to get in here? We're in the dying moments.
Here we go.
All I'd say is we're looking at what we can use today with today's technology and today's content. We don't know what content's going to be here in 5 years and what it'll need. Because look, 5 years ago, is that on?
Hold it closer.
Yep. So we just don't know. So having it prepares us for the future.
I think that's a really good point. Thank you very much. Because
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when I hear a lot of talk about rural. It'd be pretty good to find out what you actually mean by rural, because some of the places we live in are as rural as they get, just like our Matuadeas from their far north. And we, I think this whole strategy of the 1.5 billion, there needs to be a bit more input from those people in those areas, the people that, the little companies with the Wi-Fi connect. We have 3 areas up in the Uruweras, Ngāputahi, Te Whaiti and Minganui, and they're as rural as you get. And we built a Wi-Fi system off there that can provide anything you can get in Auckland. And for a hell of a lot cheaper than Auckland, around $24 a month, unlimited, with a few other relationships involved. But the point is that we're sick of being the last cab on the rank. And when we talk about economics, well, our future lies in food, our future lies in our cultural identity, our future lies in the native forest and all of those tourism things that go with that. then why isn't the resources being chucked into those people who can provide the goods for us at a cheap, affordable cost? Don't have to spend billions. Only cost us 30,000 to hook up that whole rohe. So come on, whoever's making these decisions, they need to get in the real world.
Just get in the real world and get on with it. Last chance.
Kia ora, I'd just like to tautoko te matua who just spoke. Why couldn't 10% or 1% of that 1.5 billion be put towards social conscious projects so that we all benefit? Not just the rich get richer, and bringing equity to our society, our community, into Aotearoa.
Really good question. So I think we're going to have to wrap up here. Bad cop, how do you think you did?
Looking at the scoreboard.
What's the scores?
What's on the board, Miss Ford? It looks nearly even.
Nearly even.
I reckon we put forward a good case.
I reckon we did too, actually. And I really recognise the challenge that you set out to this audience here, right? $1.5 billion is a lot of money. And we do see things that aren't necessarily valuable coming off that. And we crowded out some other stuff, and we didn't necessarily spend the money in the right area. But I think we still did some good stuff, right?
Yeah. It wasn't entirely wasted. The Minganui example which you gave, that's for people who aren't aware, that's a wireless extension off the end of government-funded fibre into the local school. And I'm picking it wouldn't have gone ahead had the government not paid fibre into that school. So it's a really good partnership. There have been benefits which have spun off it.
Yep.
I'll give you some credit for that.
And I think that the other thing that I heard, though, was that great big third question, which lurks in between these 2 points, right? Which is that if we don't want to waste, and if we think there is potential, we have to do and use and grow and spread more, basically, right? Connect those Marai and rural communities that aren't necessarily connected. Invest in the social as well as the economic outcomes. We've still got the opportunity to do some great stuff from here, eh?
Yeah, there's more money coming. There's RBI 2, UFB 2 still coming, but not set in concrete. How we spend that money is really important. So now's a chance to ring your MP.
On that note, people, thank you very much for joining us in this UFB RBI session.
Thank you.
What do we have up next in this room? Māori ICT is in this room next.